Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you're well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more relationship stories, and if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too. Let's crack on with today's first story. Much love, guys. Now today's first story comes from Responsible Log from the Am I the A-hole subreddit and says, am I the a-hole for refusing to change my style at work, even though my boyfriend says it's unprofessional? I, 24 female, have been dating my boyfriend, 26 male, for about 8 months. I've always had a very alternative look. Even as a child, I got more expressive as I grew up. Colourful hair, facial piercings, tattoos, and very dark and bold makeup. This is how I feel most comfortable and happy. When we started dating, my boyfriend said he liked my look, even though he himself dresses very basically. He even hyped me up when I showed him new makeup looks or outfits. However, a few days ago, as I was getting ready for work, he kept making weird faces at me. I asked him what was up and he said nothing but kept shaking his head. This really irritated me because he was obviously bothered, but I wasn't going to entertain his huffy behavior. I finished getting ready and tried to kiss him goodbye like I always do, but he just turned away from me. This really hurt my feelings and I can't even lie. I did cry a little bit on the way to work. I tried to text him during my breaks, but he didn't respond at all. When I finally got home and he still wouldn't say anything to me, I lost it. I asked him what his problem was and why he's treating me this way. He motioned to my clothes and simply said, "that." I obviously didn't know what he meant, so I asked what about it, and he said something like, "I just can't believe you'd wear that to work." I was confused because this is what I always wear. I told him that and he was like, "Yeah, I know, it's so unprofessional. You'll never accomplish anything looking like that." I couldn't believe he said that to me. I was fighting back tears at this point, trying to tell him that my job allows it and that I'm not the only one at work that dresses like this. He just kept repeating himself and said that clearly it's not that good of a job if they allow me to look like that. I couldn't take it anymore and left to go to my sister's house. He called me and I told him to fuck off, that I wasn't going to change my look because he didn't like it. He called me selfish, saying that I'm ruining our future together because I can't sacrifice one thing, so we could have a good life together. Even though my job allows it, and it's a good paying office job, there was no reason for me to sacrifice anything. After that, I hung up on him and ignored him the rest of the night. I explained everything to my sister, and she does agree my look is unprofessional. But if it doesn't cause issues at work, then it shouldn't matter. The next day, I had about 1 million messages from him saying how selfish I'm being and ruining our futures. I started feeling really guilty for leaving. I feel like I'm not wrong here, but even my sister kind of agreed with him, so I don't know. So OP goes on to answer some of the common questions down in the comments below. They say, reading through the comments and I notice a few reoccurring questions, so I'll answer as best as I can. As for my job, I work in insurance. I don't want to give too much information more than that for privacy, but this is a well-paying job. I've gotten promoted twice in the 2.5 years I've been here, and my direct manager is covered in tattoos. I also don't wear anything inappropriate. I'm always fully covered, so my appearance genuinely is not an issue. As for his sudden change, I really don't understand it either. I guess it is possible someone said something to him, but he didn't mention that. We haven't talked since I came back either because he's ignoring me now. We don't technically live together. He just stays over at my place most of the time, so I'm guessing he went back to his mum's. I do plan on having a serious discussion with him about what happened and our relationship. Someone says to OP, "Girl, why did you have to leave your place?" OP says, "I left because I was very emotional and didn't want to make things worse. We don't live together, but he does stay with me most days. Things have been so good the entire relationship, so I was completely caught off guard by this. I feel guilty because he does seem concerned for me, but he also isn't listening, which is upsetting." Now, a part of me is wondering what this change is all about, as OP doesn't really understand it either. Not that it matters at all, but it'd just be interesting to know why. Or are you just now seeing the real side of this guy, that you're not willing to sacrifice one thing for him? Today it's clothing, what else is it in the future? And I think this is more than just about the way you look at work, because he's saying that you're ruining your whole future together and you can't sacrifice one thing so we could have a good life together. What does it matter how you're looking at work? Your work's completely fine with it. It's not affecting your job in any way. And I can certainly say for myself, I wouldn't want to be with someone who's saying this kind of shit to you. Akamka says, and not the a-hole, and quotes, he called me selfish, saying that I'm ruining our future together because I can't sacrifice one thing so we could have a good life together. Then says sacrifice him so that you can have a good life apart. Your little Ruth says, his evil plan is working. He's managed to make you feel insecure and guilty. Be very careful. PTA, by which I mean he is not the boss of you, but I get a strong feeling that he wants to be. Don't let him. Not the a-hole. Toxic Monkey says, not the a-hole. Listen, my niece is a microbiologist and is covered in tattoos. Changes her hair color regularly, has a nose piercing, and is getting her PhD, which includes having to teach a certain number of hours. Not one person has given a shit about her looks. I don't like how he's suddenly trying to change you under the guise of ruining your future together. That's bullshit. Be happy. Apprehensive Fan says, not the a-hole, and are you familiar with the term moving the goalpost? Okay, today it's your look. What will it be next? The way you talk? The music you listen to? The way you laugh, stand, cook, sleep, behave? This is not to say it will escalate, but the way he behaved over 24 hours tells me, oh yes the fuck it will. You are going to end up more miserable than you ever thought you'd be, and all you'll hear is how it's your fault. I say to you gently, with great firmness, the call is coming from inside the house, get out now. And I say this as an older woman with flamingly bright orange, red, brown gradient hair, and anyone who doesn't like it can pound sand. Your look is for you, not him. Rainbow Crane says, not the a-hole, professional attire has entirely different meaning now than it did 50 years ago, or even 30 years ago when I started working. I worked in tech and started working just as ties stopped being required, and my multiple earrings were transgressive. Now the uniform includes tats, facial piercings, and multicolored hair, and no one gives a crap how you look as long as you can do the work. More concerning to me is that your boyfriend clearly has some plan in his head for what your career progression will look like and it will mean for his standard of living, and is taking ownership of your career. This seems less about your look and more about him feeling entitled to your career success. Ruth Barb says, not the a-hole. Everyone's talking about your clothes, but I want to talk about the passive-aggressive and then hostile way he's treating you. Run from a man who tisks you. He won't tell you what's bothering him, turns his head away from you, and calls you selfish for not doing what he wants. Also, it won't stop with your clothes. Opie then updates their post and says, I was not allowed to post an update on the Am I the A-hole sub, so I decided to post it here for anyone who wanted to know what ended up happening. So you guys were right. My boyfriend finally came back to my apartment Sunday. No message or call, just walked in like nothing happened. I immediately started questioning him, asking where the hell he's been and why hasn't he been answering me. He gives me a half-assed response saying his mum needed help with something and he forgot to tell me. I told him he can't just ignore me for 3 days, and he said he wasn't, even though he clearly was. I was already getting upset, so I told him that even if he was ignoring me, the way he treated me before he left was messed up. Of course, he just starts saying that he didn't do anything wrong and that he was just trying to help me see how I'm hurting us both by dressing the way I do. I tell him for like the 500th time my job does not care what I wear and it's not his concern. He said even if my work was okay with it, other people do, and he shouldn't have to suffer because of it. This is where shit went south. I started yelling, who is saying that and why does it even matter? He says no one, but he sees the way people stare and it embarrasses him. I cried because I was so hurt. He told me to stop being dramatic and that it isn't a big deal, but at this point I'm beyond pissed. I said if he's so embarrassed of how I dress, he can date someone else. He starts to freak out saying that's not what he meant and he's just worried what people think. I keep asking what people because clearly their opinion is more important than how I feel. He just kept looking around and trying to change the subject, saying shit like there's no one specific but. I told him I didn't want to hear it and to leave right now. He was saying things like, are you serious? Now are you really gonna act this way over clothes? I just told him to get out over and over and he eventually left, making a big deal of stomping out and slamming the door. Monday, I put all of his shit in a box and left it outside and texted him he can come pick it up when he brings me back my key. I told him we are done because I won't be with someone who treats me like this. He kept messaging me, but I just ignored all of it. He came by at some point and picked up his stuff, but didn't leave the key. I was extremely worried that he would try to come into my apartment while I was asleep or away, so I called my dad and he changed my locks for me. Overall, I'm just extremely emotionally exhausted and heartbroken. I knew his behavior towards me was shitty, but I was truly hoping it was him being bad at communicating. I was way too hung up on it being about my style, and not him being manipulative like you guys were saying. I do think maybe someone specific got into his head, but he wouldn't say who. Either way, it doesn't really matter because it's over. I appreciate all the kind comments and messages from the last post. He is toxic, and I'm annoyed and embarrassed I didn't want to see it. And like OP said, of course they're going to be exhausted and heartbroken in a situation like this, but I've got to say, like many people say when we cover these stories, I think this is a bullet dodged in this situation. You know, for me, that relationship was over in that first part of the post, but even on the update, when he had the chance to come back and say, look, I really fucked up. Again, I don't think it would have made any difference to what happened here because of the way he's shown himself. But he had the opportunity to say, you know, what I did say was absolutely fucked up. But he didn't do so. He comes back and says, are you serious? Are you really going to act this way over clothes? When he's the one who's acting this way over clothes, the bloody Burke. But the very last line of the post made me quite sad for OP as well, when they said, I'm annoyed and embarrassed, I didn't want to see it. But it's like many stories we've seen in the past. It felt like he was wearing a mask this whole time and now was comfortable enough to let it slip. So of course it's going to be difficult to spot this kind of behavior. But now I'm going to turn this one to you guys. What do you guys make of this situation? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Let's move on to another story. Now, our next story does come with an update from the Am I the A-Hole subreddit from Scootin' Dog, who says, am I the a-hole for not giving my boss my first class seat? Yesterday, my boss and I were flying home from a conference. We're on the same flight, but our original seats were not next to each other. I'm a frequent traveler on this airline and use their credit card, so I often get free upgrades to first class. I got upgraded on this flight and my boss did not. After the flight, when we were collecting our bag, she said she wanted to talk to me about my lack of respect for protocol. She thinks that because my company paid for my original ticket and she is more senior than me, I should have given her the first class seat. I think this is absolutely insane. While the company paid for my seat, it's my own personal credit card spending and frequent travel that earned me the upgraded seat. Is this some sort of corporate standard I'm not aware of? Am I the a-hole? A commenter says to OP, not the a-hole. If you want to cover your ass going forward, you can always email HR and ask, X happened while on this trip and manager Y advised that I should have done Z. Can you point me to where I can review the protocol so I know going forward? It documents the incident without being accusatory and lets you be able to cite chapter and verse if there's a next time. OP says, this is a really helpful suggestion, thank you. She has retaliated against other employees who have raised concerns about her attitude with HR before, so this tact feels a little more comfortable to me than outright complaint. Someone asks, does HR know she has retaliated? OP says, I know a former co-worker mentioned in her exit interview. This former co-worker was questioned by our boss about why he had so many doctor's appointments. He reported to HR and then our boss screamed at him. She's very buddy-buddy with our HR rep, which is what has made me nervous in the past. They seem very willing to believe her over employees. Someone says, does company allow you to pay with miles? OP says, thank you, yes, our company lets us use our miles, or personal money to upgrade the economy ticket they purchase. So yes, in theory, she could have paid with her own money to upgrade. I just happened to get an upgrade because my status with the airline and their credit card. Someone says, is your boss an owner? OP says, it's a large corporation and she's just higher on the food chain than me. She is not an owner. And then one more time about OP and boss and says, I'll satisfy your curiosity and say I'm a 32-year-old female and she is around 50. So then OP did update this post 5 weeks later and they said, thank you to the many of you kind Redditors who made me realize 1, I was not the a-hole in this situation, and 2, I was in a very toxic work situation. I took the advice of many of you gave me and clarified the policy with HR. The company, of course, did not have this policy. I also took your advice to get out of that job quickly, and I'm happy to say I'm starting a new job in 3 weeks. I know the person who will be my supervisor in my new job, and she is a very kind, normal person. Pretty nervous to give my notice to the toxic boss on Monday, but oh well. If she's nasty, then my 2 weeks notice will become an immediate resignation. We live in a one-party consent for recording state and plan to record the phone conversation to protect myself. Thanks to all of you for giving me the push to move on. Some more information on why OP couldn't have just gone scorched earth. OP says, unfortunately I work in a small field, so I need to preserve my reputation. She knows my new boss, so I definitely can't be snarky on my way out. Just trying to do the bare minimum and make my exit gracefully. Then another update. It says, hey there, I haven't updated because it was totally unexciting, lol. I resigned over the phone. She seemed surprised and asked a lot of questions about why, and that was that. I kept it very short because I knew any detail I gave would just be an argument. Told her I needed to try something new and wasn't sure the company was the right fit. When one of my jobs in the past, when I was a bit younger, first like into the workplace, quite young, naive, etc. And you can let me know what you think of this situation, but this sort of rubbed me the wrong way when it was going on. So I worked in a warehouse environment and various products were sold alongside some other stuff that went on in this place, but products were sold, so suppliers would send it in on huge pallets, would put it away, get sold, etc, etc. But at the end of the year, these big companies, and generally these were Italian companies that were sending these products in, would send in a pallet load pretty much of gifts. There was like Italian chocolates. I saw like electric razors, all sorts of different cool stuff that was sent in. And they were Christmas gifts intended for the staff. But the bosses of this, there were 3 big bosses in there. I think the finance manager, the MD, and this other supervisor of another department who was an absolute arsehole. They would insist the gifts were taken into their office, and then basically they would go through them and divvy them out to the people they basically liked. Warehouse, we never got anything. They never had anything for us. And I think part of the reason they did this is because the company itself, who we worked for, not the Italian company, gave us, I think it was like a box of Lindor chocolates or something each, or a box of celebrations. So, you know, everyone else has already had their gifts. So the gift from the Italian company was more directed towards the higher ups. Which, that can't be right? Am I wrong there? I don't know. Just seemed really scummy to me. I bet they still do that to this day. That company was full of people anyway who just step on each other to get more power. But anyway, let's move on to another story. Now, our next story is from the Am I the A-Hole subreddit from Booziel123. Doesn't come with an update entitled Am I the A-Hole for yelling at a kid for crawling under my table at a restaurant? OP says, my friend Jack and I, after a long stressful week, like to go to the local pizza place. It's not fine dining by any stretch of the imagination, but there are booths and tables of people sitting down. I see a large table near us of like 10 people, a few couples and a bunch of small kids between like 4 and 8, and the kids are running around the restaurant being loud while the adults are drinking wine and eating their pizza. I ignore the commotion for like 20 minutes when suddenly I feel like a hand on my leg and one of the little kids is crawling under Jack and my table. I wasn't thinking and snapped at the kid and said, get away from our table. And the kid ran away and burst into tears. One of the parents at the other table came over and started tearing into me about how cranky and mean I was and how dare I yell at her kid, who was just playing. Meanwhile, her and the other middle-aged 40-something parents are letting their kids run amok and be loud and obnoxious while my friend and I are trying to enjoy a night. I ripped her a new one and said, how entitled do you need to be to think it's okay to let your kids just crawl under other people's tables? She called me an arsehole and walked away in a huff. And we're starting the comments with Satisfactory Loaf, who says I'm not the a-hole. Her exhaustion, boundaries, parental philosophy create no obligations for you. Your personal space was invaded. You reacted to repair that. Kingdom Key says, not the a-hole. People who don't scold their kids shouldn't be surprised when their kids get scolded by strangers, especially if they are just letting their kids go around and invade people's personal space. You didn't do anything wrong, and the mum and all the rest of those parents are all major arseholes. Inksplotter replies that and says, I sell at craft shows pretty regularly and get a lot of hovering parents telling their kids don't touch. My stuff is pretty durable, but I appreciate the sentiment. One time I had a kid blatantly ignoring his caretaker, I suspect grandma, who was very gently cooing at him to stop touching things as he touches everything. I leaned over my table, got eye level with the kid and said, very low, now what did she say? Kid burst into tears and ran away. I shrugged at Grandma and said, "Sorry." She just sighed and hurried after him. I was surprised because I totally expected her to be an arsehole about it. Maybe strangers scold him a lot. JMBBL says, "Not the a-hole. As a parent of a small kid between 4 and 8, I say you are responsible for your kid's behavior in a public place. If you're going to a restaurant, then bring a tablet or crayons or whatever to keep your kids occupied. You don't let them become a problem for other customers or for the staff." The mum was way out of line. Darkest Danielle says, "Not the a-hole. As a former server, I hate these families. They think that because they're giving their money to a restaurant, they have complete run of the place. If you can't keep your kids at the table and relatively calm, there's a McDonald's down the street. I'm not a babysitter, and if I kick your kid because they're screwing around the kitchen doors, so be it." Spooktacular says, "The kid is not an arsehole, but the parents are not only arseholes but extremely irresponsible, dangerous parents. That kid could have been injured or worse. A creep could see those kids and easily take them, and I doubt the parents would notice. It's remarkable to me how people have kids and don't bother parenting them, instead making their children everyone else's responsibility." Now, have you ever had an experience like this in the past? How do you deal with it? Maybe you got a different opinion on the matter. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And just a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart for getting involved in today's stories. Your love, your support, your time always means the absolute world to me. So thank you so much for being involved. Truly, it's amazing. And hopefully, I will see you in the next one. Take care and much love.